I know which house they're keeping her in." Victor Moretti didn't flinch. He'd heard 1,000 desperate pleas, 1,000 lies spilling from terrified mouths. But something about the boy standing before him, soaked to the bone, ribs showing through his threadbare shirt, eyes burning with something that looked dangerously close to courage, made him pause. "You're wasting my time, kid." Victor's voice was ice. His men shifted behind him, hands hovering near their weapons. "Walk away before you can't." The boy didn't move. Water streamed down his face, mixing with something that might have been tears, or just rain. "She gave me food, last winter. Every night for 2 weeks. She didn't know I was sleeping behind her restaurant, but she'd leave a bag by the back door. Still warm." His voice cracked. "She's the only person who ever—" "I know where she is. I saw them take her." 3 days. That's how long Caroline Hayes had been missing. 3 days since Victor's world had tilted on its axis, since the woman who'd somehow carved herself into his chest had vanished from her late-night walk home. 3 days of tearing the city apart, of bodies piling up in his wake, of rage so consuming it had burned through every shred of the control he'd spent 38 years building. Caroline wasn't supposed to matter. She was a complication he'd tried to avoid, the restaurant owner with honey-colored hair and a laugh that sounded like absolution. She fed half the neighborhood from her little Italian place, asked nothing in return, and looked at Victor like he was something more than the monster he knew himself to be. He'd told himself to stay away. Had lasted almost 6 months before walking through her door. Now she was gone, and the men responsible were going to learn what happened when you touched something that belonged to Victor Moretti. "Start talking," Victor said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "And if you're lying to me, they'll never find your body." The boy swallowed hard, but held his ground. "The warehouse on 5th and Morrison, the condemned one. They've been using the basement. I sleep in the building across the street sometimes. Saw them carry her in 2 nights ago. She was fighting, kicking. They hit her, but she didn't stop." Pride flickered through Victor's chest, sharp and unexpected. Of course Caroline had fought. She had fire underneath all that softness, steel beneath the warmth. It's what had drawn him to her in the first place. "How many men?" 6, maybe 7. They switch out every few hours." Victor's jaw clenched. The Kozlov brothers. Russian outfit that had been pushing into his territory for months, testing boundaries, seeing how far they could go. This was their answer to his last warning. They'd taken the one thing that could break him. They'd miscalculated. "Marco," Victor said without turning. His second-in-command stepped forward. "Take the kid. Get him dry. Fed." "I don't want food." The boy's voice rose, desperate. "I want to help get her back." "You're 12. 13. And I know that building better than anyone. I know how to get in without them seeing. I know which boards are loose, which rooms they don't check. You need me." Victor studied him, saw himself 25 years ago, hungry and angry, and willing to bleed for the slightest chance at something better. "What's your name?" "Liam." "Liam, you've done enough. You've given me what I need. Now—" "She's in the northwest corner, basement level. I heard her screaming yesterday." Liam's voice broke completely now. "Please. She saved my life. Let me help save hers." The wind howled through the alley, carrying the stench of rot and desperation that clung to this part of the city. Victor's empire was built on violence, on taking what he wanted and crushing anyone who stood in his way. He'd killed his first man at 16, had stopped counting bodies before he turned 20. But Caroline had looked at him across her restaurant counter 6 months ago and said, "You have kind eyes. Sad, but kind." No one had ever called him kind before. No one had ever seen past the blood on his hands. "Get in the car," Victor said finally, "but you follow my orders exactly, or I'll have Marco sit on you until this is over. Understood?" Liam nodded so hard water flew from his hair. 20 minutes later, they were parked 3 blocks from the warehouse. Victor had pulled in every man he had, 30 of the most dangerous killers in the city, armed to the teeth and ready to paint the walls red. But Liam had been right. The building was a fortress if you came at it head-on. Attacking would take time they might not have. "Show me," Victor said. Liam led him through the rain to a collapsed section of fence, then through a maze of debris to a broken basement window. "This leads to the old boiler room. They don't check it. From there, you can reach the northwest corner without going through the main corridors." Victor looked at the window, looked at Liam. "You've been inside?" "Yesterday. I had to make sure it was really her. I got close enough to see. They'd tied her to a chair. Her face was bruised, but she was alive. She was singing to herself, really quiet. I think she was trying to stay brave." Something in Victor's chest cracked open. Caroline sang when she cooked, old Italian songs her grandmother had taught her. He'd sat at her counter more nights than he could count, pretending to review paperwork while really just listening to her voice. "Everyone in position?" he asked into his radio. "Ready on your signal, boss." Victor turned to Liam. "You stay here, with Marco. No arguments. But you brought me to her. That's enough. If I don't come back..." Victor pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Give this to a lawyer named Richard Santos. He'll make sure you're taken care of. School, food, a real place to live. Caroline would want that. You're coming back." Liam's voice was fierce. "You have to. She talks about you." Victor froze. "What?" "When she leaves the food, sometimes she talks to herself. Says things like, 'I hope Victor's staying safe,' or 'I wonder if Victor's eating enough.'" Liam's smile was small and knowing. "She doesn't know I can hear her, but she cares about you. A lot." The last piece of Victor's control shattered. He'd tried so hard to keep distance between them, had told himself that what he felt was just attraction, just fascination with something pure in his corrupt world. But the truth was he'd fallen for Caroline Hayes the moment she'd slid an extra portion of lasagna across the counter and said, "You look like you could use some comfort food." No one had cared about his comfort before. No one had seen him as something worth saving. "Stay here," Victor repeated. Then he dropped through the window into darkness. The boiler room smelled like rust and decay. Victor moved silently, years of practice making him more ghost than man. He could hear voices above, Russian, arguing about money and territory. Not about Caroline. She was just a pawn to them, a tool to hurt him. They had no idea what they'd unleashed. The corridor was narrow, walls pressing close. Victor's radio crackled. "Thermals showing 7 heat signatures, 6 on the main floor, 1 in the northwest corner. Basement. She's alone?" "Affirmative. Wait. Negative. 1 signature moving toward her position." Victor's blood turned to ice, then fire. He started running. The basement opened into a warren of small rooms, each one more decrepit than the last. He could hear footsteps now, heavy and purposeful. A door creaking open. Then Caroline's voice, hoarse but defiant. "Get away from me." Such fire. The accent was thick, amused. "Your boyfriend should have thought about that before he killed my brother. Now you pay his debt. Victor will find you when he does." The sound of a slap echoed through the basement. "He won't find anything but a body." Victor rounded the corner. The man had his back turned, one hand raised for another strike. Caroline was tied to a chair, her face bruised and swollen, blood at the corner of her mouth. But her eyes, God, her eyes were still blazing with that fierce light he'd fallen in love with. Her gaze found Victor over the man's shoulder. Widened. He pressed a finger to his lips. She understood immediately. Just like she always understood him. Started talking, drawing the man's attention. "You really think killing me will hurt him? I'm nobody. Just a restaurant owner who makes him dinner sometimes. Don't lie, we've been watching. He comes to you every night, sits at your counter like a lovesick puppy. The man laughed. The great Victor Moretti, brought low by a woman who serves pasta. Then you don't know him at all, Caroline said softly, because Victor doesn't do anything by halves. And when he finds out what you've done... She smiled, bright and terrible. I almost feel sorry for you. Victor moved like lightning. One hand clamped over the man's mouth, the other driving a blade between his ribs with surgical precision. The man went down without a sound. Caroline. Victor was on his knees in front of her, hands shaking as he cut through the ropes. God, Caroline, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You came. Her voice broke. I knew you would. I knew. She gasped as the ropes fell away, then threw her arms around his neck. I knew you'd find me. Victor held her like she was air itself, like letting go would mean drowning. She was trembling, or maybe he was. He couldn't tell where he ended, and she began. I've got you. You're safe now. I promise. You're safe. There are 6 more upstairs. I know. My men are. His radio crackled to life. Boss, we've got a problem. They're moving the fight outside. Must have heard something. We need your call. Caroline pulled back, eyes searching his face. Even bruised and bleeding, she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Victor, what do I mean to you? What? Tell me. Her hands cupped his face. Because I've been sitting here for 3 days, thinking I might die without you knowing that I love you. That I've loved you since the first time you walked into my restaurant and pretended you didn't know the difference between marinara and arrabbiata just to keep me talking. Victor's heart stopped. You knew? You're a crime boss, Victor. You know everything about everything. She smiled through her tears. You just wanted an excuse to stay. I wanted... His voice failed him. Started again. I wanted to be someone different when I was with you. Someone worth your time. You are worth my time. You're worth everything. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and desperate. So, tell me, what do I mean to you? Victor had built an empire on fear and violence, had sworn he'd never let anyone close enough to matter. But Caroline had broken through every defense without even trying, had made him believe in redemption he didn't deserve. You're my heart, he said simply, the only good thing in my entire life, and I will burn this city to the ground before I let anyone hurt you again. Then let's go home, Caroline whispered. Together. The radio crackled again. Boss, they're making a run for it. East exit. Orders? Victor stood, pulling Caroline with him. She was unsteady but alive, fierce and perfect in his. Contain them. I want them alive. Copy that. Getting Caroline out of the basement was easier than getting in. His men had secured the perimeter, and the 6 Russians were kneeling in the rain by the time Victor emerged with Caroline in his arms. She was strong enough to walk, but he couldn't bring himself to put her down. The Kozlov brothers were at the front of the line, Alexei and Dmitri, the ones who'd thought they could wage war against Victor Moretti and win. They looked at Caroline and went pale. You made a mistake, Victor said quietly. The rain had soaked through his suit, but he didn't feel the cold. Didn't feel anything except the steady beat of Caroline's heart against his chest. You thought taking her would break me. You were right about that. But you forgot what happens when you break someone who has nothing left to lose. Victor, Alexei started. I'm not finished. Victor's voice could have cut glass. You wanted to send a message. Fine, I'm sending one back. You go free. All of you. His men stirred in surprise. The Russians looked confused. But, Victor continued, you take this message to every organization in this city. Every crew, every family, every punk with a gun and a dream. Caroline Hayes is under my protection. Mine. Anyone who touches her, anyone who even looks at her wrong, will answer to me. And I promise you. He looked at each Russian in turn. Let them see the monster he'd been holding back. What I do to them will make tonight look like mercy. He gestured to Marco. Cut them loose. Let them go. Boss, they kidnapped. They made their point. Now I've made mine. Victor looked down at Caroline. All I want is to take my girl home. Caroline was staring at him with wide eyes. You're letting them go? Killing them would be easy. Letting them live with the memory of what they almost unleashed? That's punishment. He brushed a thumb across her cheek, careful of the bruises. I told you, you're my heart, and I'm not wasting another second on people who don't matter. The Russians scrambled away, practically falling over themselves to escape. Victor didn't watch them go. His entire world had narrowed to the woman in his arms. Take me home, Caroline said softly. Our home. Something in Victor's chest expanded. Our home? I'm not letting you out of my sight ever again, which means you're either moving into my apartment above the restaurant, or I'm moving into wherever you live. She smiled, then winced. Fair warning, I snore when I have a cold, and I currently feel like I've been hit by a truck. I have a house, Victor said. 20 minutes from here. Pool, garden, security system that could stop a military invasion. He paused. It's been empty for years. It never felt like home. And now? Now I know why. I was waiting for you. Caroline kissed him again, longer this time, pouring 3 days of fear and relief and love into it. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. Then take me home, Victor Moretti. And tomorrow we'll figure out how a crime boss and a restaurant owner make this work. I'm done with this life, Victor heard himself say. The words came from somewhere deep, somewhere he'd buried under years of violence. I've been looking for a way out for months, years maybe. I didn't know what I'd do instead. We'll figure it out together. Caroline laid her head on his shoulder. But right now, I really need a shower, some ice packs, and about 12 hours of sleep with you holding me. Done. Victor started walking toward his car, Marco falling into step behind them. Then he remembered. Wait, Liam. The boy was still where Victor had left him, soaked and shivering, but refusing to get in Marco's car until he knew Caroline was safe. When he saw her, his face crumpled with relief. You saved my life, Caroline called out to him. Come here. Liam approached hesitantly. Caroline reached out, took his hand. Thank you. I don't know what you did, but thank you. I remembered the food, how you helped me when no one else would. Liam looked at Victor. Is she really okay? She will be. Victor made a decision. You ever think about having a family, kid? Liam's eyes went wide. What? You're brave, loyal, smart enough to survive on these streets for God knows how long. Victor glanced at Caroline, saw her understanding dawn, saw her nod encouragement. I'm getting out of this business, going to need a fresh start. Caroline and we could use someone to help keep us honest. Someone to remind us what we're building all this for. Are you asking? Liam couldn't finish the sentence. I'm asking if you'd like a home, Caroline said gently. A real one. With us. The boy's face did something complicated. I don't know how to be part of a family. Neither do I, Victor admitted. But I figure we can learn together. Liam looked between them. The crime boss trying to find redemption. The restaurant owner who saw the best in everyone. And the broken boy who'd risked everything for a stranger's kindness. Then he smiled, small and fragile and full of hope. Yeah, I'd like that. 3 months later, Caroline stood in the kitchen of Victor's house, their house now, and watched through the window as Victor taught Liam how to throw a punch. Proper form, controlled power. Not for hurting people, Victor had explained, but for protecting yourself, for standing your ground. Liam was filling out. Regular meals and safety had added weight to his frame, color to his face. He laughed at something Victor said, and Caroline's heart squeezed with joy. The restaurant was still running, better than ever. Victor had surprised her by being brilliant at business, the legitimate kind. He'd restructured her operations, expanded her outreach programs, turned her little neighborhood spot into something that could actually make a difference. Every night they fed 100 people who needed it. Every night, Caroline left bags of warm food by the back door for anyone who might be sleeping in the cold. Victor's exit from organized crime had been messy, but final. He'd turned over evidence to the FBI, helped dismantle 3 rival organizations, and negotiated immunity in exchange for cooperation. Some of his former associates had called him a traitor. Others had understood and quietly followed his lead. Marco now ran a private security firm, completely legal, fully licensed, and doing better than anyone had expected. The doorbell rang. Caroline wiped her hands on her apron, flour everywhere, because she was testing a new bread recipe, and opened the door. A woman in her 50s stood on the porch, official-looking and stern. "Ms. Hayes? That's me. I'm Janet Morrison from Child Services. We spoke on the phone about the adoption proceedings." Caroline's pulse kicked up. "Of course. Please, come in. Victor's out back with Liam. I'll get them." 5 minutes later, they were all sitting in the living room. Liam was pressed against Caroline's side, nervous energy radiating off him. Victor's hand was on Caroline's knee, steady and grounding. "I've reviewed all the paperwork," Janet said, flipping through her folder. "Home study looks excellent. Financial statements are more than sufficient. Background checks." She paused, looked at Victor. "Are complicated." "I understand," Victor said quietly. "I've made mistakes, hurt people. I can't change that. But I can promise that I will spend the rest of my life being someone Liam can be proud of." "He already is," Liam blurted out. "Victor saved my life. Both of them did. They're teaching me things, important things. How to read better, how to stand up straight, how to—" His voice dropped. "How to let people care about me." Janet's expression softened. "The judge has reviewed everything. Given Mr. Moretti's cooperation with federal authorities and his complete exit from criminal activity, and given that you've both completed the required parenting classes and home visits," she smiled, "she's approved the adoption. Congratulations, you're officially a family." Caroline burst into tears. Victor's hand tightened on her knee. And Liam, brave, fierce Liam who'd survived so much, looked at them with wonder. "Really?" he whispered. "I'm yours?" "You've been ours since the moment you told me you knew where she was," Victor said roughly. "This just makes it official." They celebrated that night at the restaurant. Caroline cooked Liam's favorite meal, chicken parmesan with extra cheese, while Victor opened a bottle of sparkling cider. The staff knew what today meant, and they decorated the whole place with balloons and streamers. "Speech!" one of the waiters called out. Victor stood, uncomfortable with the attention but willing to try, for his family. "I don't know what to say. 6 months ago, I was a different person, a worse person. Then Caroline taught me what it meant to care about something more than power." He looked at her, and the love in his eyes made her breath catch. "And Liam taught me what it meant to be brave." "You're the brave one," Liam protested. "You walked into that basement alone." "Bravery isn't not being scared. It's being terrified and doing it anyway." Victor's smile was crooked. "You were just a kid, and you stood up to a crime boss in an alley. That's the definition of courage. I learned from the best." Liam raised his glass. "To family. To family," Caroline and Victor echoed. Later, after Liam had gone to bed, Caroline and Victor sat on their back porch and watched the stars. The city lights dimmed them, but if you looked hard enough, you could still see them shining. "I never thought I'd get this," Victor said quietly. "Didn't think I deserved it." "You've built a new life, made amends where you could. That takes courage, too." "I had help." He pulled her closer. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." "That's what love is." Caroline tilted her face up. "Seeing someone's potential and helping them become it." Victor kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. When he pulled back, he was smiling. A real smile, the kind he'd never been able to manage before Caroline. "Marry me," he said. Caroline laughed. Was that a question? "Caroline Hayes, will you marry me?" Victor dropped to one knee right there on the porch, the city spread out below them like a carpet of lights. Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you? You already deserve me, you stubborn man. She pulled him up, kissed him again. And yes, 1,000 times yes. Should we tell Liam in the morning? Absolutely not. He's definitely still awake and listening at his window. Caroline raised her voice slightly. Isn't that right, Liam? A guilty laugh drifted down from the second floor. Maybe. Get to bed, Victor called up, but he was smiling. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Can I be your best man? Liam shouted. Only if you go to sleep right now. Footsteps scurried away. Caroline and Victor looked at each other and burst out laughing. This is my life now, Victor said wonderingly. Yelling at a teenager to go to bed, planning a wedding, running a restaurant. Is it everything you wanted? He thought about it, thought about the empire he'd built on blood and fear, the respect that came from terror instead of love. Thought about the cold loneliness of power, the empty victories. Then he thought about Caroline's laugh, Liam's smile, the warmth of family dinners, and the peace of knowing he was building something real. It's better, Victor said. It's so much better than anything I could have imagined. 6 months later, they got married in the restaurant's garden. It was small, intimate, just the people who mattered. Marco was there, tears in his eyes as he stood up as Victor's best man. Liam gave Caroline away, proud in his new suit, beaming like the sun. When Victor slid the ring onto Caroline's finger and promised to love her until his last breath, he meant every word. She'd saved him, not just from the life he'd been living, but from the man he'd been becoming. She'd shown him that redemption wasn't about erasing the past, it was about building a better future. And as Caroline kissed him, as their family and friends cheered, as Liam Wolfe whistled loudly enough to make them both laugh against each other's lips, Victor Moretti finally understood what he'd been searching for his entire life. Not power, not fear, not control, just love, just home. Just this perfect, messy, beautiful thing called family. 3 years later, Caroline was pregnant with their first biological child. Liam was 16 and thriving in school, talking about college, and maybe becoming a social worker to help other kids like him. Victor ran a youth outreach program in addition to his work with Caroline's restaurant, teaching at-risk teenagers that there were paths beyond violence. They'd created something real, something lasting, and it had all started with a homeless boy in the rain, brave enough to tell a monster where to find his heart. What are you thinking about? Caroline asked one night, her hand on her growing belly. Victor looked at his family, his wife, his son, the daughter on the way, and felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. How a restaurant owner saved my life, he said. And how I'd do it all again, every mistake, every wrong turn, if it meant ending up here. With you. With all of this. Caroline smiled and took his hand. Outside, the city hummed with its familiar chaos. But inside this house, inside this life they'd built together, there was only peace. Only love. Only home. The call came at 2 a.m, shattering the peace they'd built so carefully. Victor's phone lit up the darkness, Marco's name flashing across the screen. He answered on the first ring, already sitting up, already knowing that calls at this hour never brought good news. Boss, we've got a situation. It's Liam. Caroline was awake instantly, her hand gripping Victor's arm. What happened? He's at County General, stable, but... Marco's voice was tight. You need to get here, now. They broke every speed limit getting to the hospital. Caroline was still in her pajamas. Victor had thrown on whatever clothes he could find. The pregnancy made her movements slower, more careful, but the terror in her eyes was sharp and immediate. Liam was their son, their boy. If something had happened to him... Marco met them in the emergency room waiting area, his face grim. He's okay, physically. Some bruises, maybe a cracked rib. But Victor, there's more. Tell me. Victor's voice was deadly calm, the old edge creeping back in. He was at a party. Someone slipped something in his drink. When he started feeling sick, he tried to leave and... Marco hesitated. There were 3 older guys, early 20s. They followed him out, tried to drag him into a car. He fought back, hard. One of them pulled a knife. Caroline made a sound like she'd been punched. Where are they? Victor asked quietly. Police have 2 of them. The 3rd ran. Marco met his eyes. But Victor? The 2 they caught? They're connected. Tommy Castellano's nephews. The name hit like a freight train. Tommy Castellano, one of the few crime bosses who'd actually resented Victor's testimony to the feds, who'd lost significant territory when the organizations Victor helped dismantle had fallen. They'd had an understanding, a cold peace built on mutual avoidance. That peace had just shattered. He's making a move, Victor said, using Liam to draw me back in. That's what I'm thinking. The timing's too convenient. Liam just happens to be at a party where Castellano's nephews just happened to be. They were hunting him. Caroline was shaking, her hand pressed to her belly. I need to see him. Where is he? Room 347. They're keeping him overnight for observation, but he's asking for you. They found Liam sitting up in bed, one eye swollen shut, lips split, bruises blooming across his jaw. But when he saw them, his face crumpled with relief and shame. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to fit in, and someone said there was a party, and I thought... Caroline was at his side immediately, gathering him into her arms as carefully as her pregnant belly would allow. Shh, you have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. This isn't your fault. But if I hadn't gone, then they would have found another way. Victor's voice was harder than he intended. He forced himself to soften it. Liam, look at me. His son, because that's what Liam was, adoption papers or not, raised his eyes. There was fear there, and pain, but also something else. Something that looked like the boy Victor had met in that alley 3 years ago, desperate and brave, and trying so hard to be strong. What happened after they grabbed you? Victor asked. I remembered what you taught me. The punches, the pressure points. I fought back. Liam's voice steadied. I got away from 2 of them. The 3rd one, the one with the knife, he was faster. But then the cops showed up. Someone must have called them. Did they say anything? The men who grabbed you? Liam hesitated. The one with the knife. When he had me against the wall, he said to tell you that old debts always come due, that you can't hide behind your little family forever. Victor's hands clenched into fists. Caroline looked at him, and he could see her making the same calculations he was. They had a daughter on the way. They had Liam. They had built a life based on the belief that the past could stay buried. But the past had other ideas. I'm calling in protective detail, Marco said from the doorway, for all of you, round the clock until we figure this out. No, Victor's voice cut through the room. That's exactly what Castellano wants. He wants me paranoid, wants me pulling back into that world, wants me to react like the old Victor would have reacted. So what do we do? Caroline asked. Just wait for him to try again? We end this, permanently. Victor looked at his family, his wife, his son, the life he'd fought so hard to build. But we do it my way, the new way. The next morning, Victor walked into the federal building downtown and asked for Agent Sarah Chen, the FBI handler who'd worked his case 3 years ago. She met him in a conference room, surprise evident on her face. Victor Moretti, didn't expect to see you here voluntarily. I need to make a deal. You already made your deal. Immunity in exchange for testimony. It's done. Not for me, for my family. Victor slid a folder across the table. Tommy Castellano is coming after my son, using him to draw me back into the life. I want protection for my family, and I want Castellano off the streets. Sarah opened the folder, scanned the contents. Her eyebrows rose. This is comprehensive. Where did you get this? I still have friends in low places. They owe me favors. And they don't like Castellano any more than I do. He's been trying to consolidate power, squeeze out the smaller operations. This information represents 6 months of work. Drug routes, money laundering operations, names of dirty cops on his payroll. Everything you need to dismantle his organization completely. In exchange for what exactly? Witness protection for my family if it comes to that. But more than that, I want a public statement. I want it known that I'm cooperating with federal authorities again, that anyone who comes after my family is coming after a federal asset. Make me untouchable by making it clear that touching me means going to war with the FBI. Sarah leaned back, studying him. You know what you're asking for. The kind of protection you're talking about, the public announcement. It'll make you a pariah in every criminal circle in the country. The few friends you have left will turn their backs. I don't need friends in those circles anymore. I need my son safe. I need my wife safe. I need my daughter to be born into a world where she doesn't have to look over her shoulder. Victor's voice was steady, absolute. I'm done pretending I can have one foot in both worlds. I'm all the way out, and I'm taking Castellano down with me. He'll retaliate. Before we can move on this information, before the protection is in place, he'll come at you with everything he has. I know. That's why I need you to move fast. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone. I'll need to run this up the chain. But Victor? For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. The right thing would have been never getting involved in that life in the first place. This is just me trying to clean up my mess before it destroys everything I love. The response came faster than expected. By that afternoon, Sarah called with news. The FBI was moving forward. They'd have agents in place within 24 hours, warrants being prepared, a full-scale operation to take down Castellano's network. But 24 hours was a lifetime when someone wanted you dead. Victor was at the restaurant with Caroline when Marco called. We've got movement. 3 cars just pulled up outside your house. They're not even trying to hide it. Liam's there, Caroline said, her face going white. They'd brought him home from the hospital that morning, thinking he'd be safer in familiar surroundings. He's in the panic room, Marco said quickly. I got him there as soon as the cars appeared. But boss, they're not leaving. They're waiting. This is a siege. Victor's mind raced. The panic room was stocked with supplies, reinforced, safe. But it was also a trap if they couldn't get Liam out. And if Castellano was willing to make this kind of move in broad daylight, he was past caring about subtlety. How many men? At least 12, maybe more. Police? Already called. They're on their way, but Victor, Castellano has cops on his payroll. We don't know who we can trust. Victor looked at Caroline, saw the fear in her eyes, but also the steel underneath. She'd proven 3 years ago that she could be brave when it mattered, that she could fight. We're going, she said before he could speak. Don't even try to argue. That's our son in there. You're 7 months pregnant. And he's our son. She grabbed her jacket. Let's go. The drive back to their house was the longest 15 minutes of Victor's life. Caroline sat beside him, one hand on her belly, the other gripping her phone. She was texting Liam, keeping him calm, telling him they were coming. He's scared, she said quietly. But he's being brave. He says he can hear them outside the panic room. They're searching the house. The room will hold. It's designed to withstand a lot worse than this. That's not what I'm worried about. Caroline's voice broke. Victor, what if they burn the house down? What if they decide if they can't get to him, they'll just... They won't. Castellano wants to send a message. But even he's not crazy enough to murder a kid in his own home in the middle of the day. The cops are already on their way. He's just trying to scare us, trying to prove he can get close. But when they turned onto their street, Victor's confidence evaporated. Smoke was rising from their house. No. Caroline's voice was a whisper. No, no, no. Victor was out of the car before it fully stopped, running toward the house. Marco met him halfway, soot on his face, coughing. They set a fire in the kitchen. It's spreading fast. Fire department's on the way, but the panic room has its own ventilation system. Liam will be okay. We just need to get him out before... Victor's phone rang. Unknown number, he answered. Hello, Victor. Tommy Castellano's voice was smooth, almost friendly. Beautiful house you have here. Had, I suppose. If you hurt him, relax. I'm not a monster. The fire's just insurance, making sure you understand the stakes. Castellano paused. You cost me everything 3 years ago. My partners, my territory, my reputation. And you thought you could just walk away? Start a nice little family? Play at being normal? What do you want? I want you to remember what you are. A killer. A monster. You can pretend all you want, dress it up in charity work and restaurants, but you're still the same man who built an empire on bodies, and monsters don't get happy endings. The line went dead. Victor looked at the house, flames visible now through the kitchen windows. Fire trucks were screaming in the distance, but they wouldn't be fast enough. The panic room was fireproof, but if the house collapsed, if the structure gave way, I'm going in, he said. The hell you are. Marco grabbed his arm. Look at it. The whole first floor's engulfed. You'll never make it to the panic room. I'm not losing my son. Not like this. Not because some angry old man wants revenge. Caroline appeared at his side, tears streaming down her face. Victor, you can't. Please. I can't lose both of you. You won't. He kissed her hard and fast. I promise. I'm coming back with Liam. Both of us. He didn't wait for her to argue, just grabbed a jacket from Marco's car, soaked it in water from someone's garden hose, and ran for the front door. The heat hit him like a physical force. Flames had consumed most of the kitchen, were spreading into the living room. The panic room was in the basement, accessed through a hidden door in Victor's study. He'd have to cross through the burning living room to get there. He thought about Caroline, about the daughter she was carrying, about Liam, scared and alone in the dark. And he ran straight into the fire. The smoke was suffocating. Victor pulled the wet jacket over his face, stayed low, moved fast. His eyes burned, his lungs screamed for air. He could hear the house groaning around him, structure weakening. The study was intact, barely. Victor found the hidden panel, pressed the sequence. The door swung open, revealing stairs leading down into darkness. Liam! He shouted. Liam, it's me! I'm coming down! Dad? The voice was small, terrified. Dad, I can smell smoke. Is the house... We're leaving, right now. Victor hit the release on the panic room door. It swung open and there was Liam, pressed against the far wall, eyes wide with fear. Victor had never been so grateful to see anyone in his life. Come on. Stay close to me. They made it back to the study before the ceiling in the living room collapsed. The crash was deafening, sending up a shower of sparks and ash. Their path to the front door was gone. Back door, Victor said. Through the kitchen. The kitchen's on fire. I know, trust me. He'd designed this house with multiple exits. Old habits from his criminal days, but useful now. There was a door from the kitchen to the back patio. If they could just reach it, Victor wrapped the jacket around Liam, held him close, and ran. The heat was unbearable. Flames licked at them from all sides. Liam was coughing, choking on smoke. Victor's shoulder caught fire, and he batted it out, kept moving, kept pushing toward that door. They burst out onto the patio just as the kitchen exploded behind them, the gas line finally rupturing. The force threw them forward, sent them tumbling across the lawn. Victor rolled, checked Liam, found him singed but alive. Both of them coughing, both of them covered in soot, but alive. Caroline was there, Marco was there, paramedics were there, and beyond them, being loaded into police cars, were Castellano's men. The cops had arrived in force, had rounded them up while Victor was inside. Is he... Caroline couldn't finish. He's okay. We're okay. Victor pulled them both close. His family. His whole world. We're okay. Agent Sarah Chen appeared through the chaos, flanked by federal agents. We got them all. Every single one of Castellano's crew at this location. And we have him, Castellano himself. Picked him up 10 minutes ago at his office downtown. The fire was the last stupid thing he'll do as a free man. Arson, attempted murder, kidnapping. And that's before we add in everything from your file. He's going away forever, Victor. It's done. Victor looked at his burning house, at everything they'd built quite literally going up in flames. Then he looked at his family, alive and safe, despite everything. Good, he said simply. 3 months later, they stood in front of a new house, smaller than the old one, in a quieter neighborhood, with security that didn't scream former criminal, but would still keep them safe. The FBI had kept their word. Castellano was awaiting trial on charges that would keep him locked up for life, and his organization had been completely dismantled. Liam was carrying boxes, fully healed, stronger somehow for everything he'd survived. Caroline was supervising, one hand on her massive belly, due any day now. "What do you think?" Victor asked her. "I think," Caroline said slowly, "that home was never about the house anyway. It's about this. Us. All of us." Wise words from a very pregnant woman. Respect the pregnant woman. She's growing your daughter. Liam laughed, and the sound was pure joy. "You two are disgusting." "You love it," Caroline said. "Yeah," Liam admitted. "I really do." That night, after Liam had gone to bed, after they'd unpacked enough to make the place livable, Victor and Caroline sat on their new back porch and looked at the stars. "Do you regret it?" Caroline asked. "Giving up everything from your old life? The power, the respect?" Victor thought about it, really thought about it. Then he pulled her close, felt their daughter kick against his hand. "I gave up being feared," he said, "but I gained being loved. I gave up power over strangers, but I gained a family. I gave up respect built on violence, but I gained respect built on being a good father, a good husband, a good man." He kissed her temple. "No, I don't regret a single thing." 2 weeks later, their daughter was born. They named her Hope, because that's what she represented. Hope for a better future. Hope for redemption. Hope that even the darkest past could lead to the brightest tomorrow. Liam held his baby sister with the kind of reverence usually reserved for sacred things. "She's so small." "You'll teach her to be strong," Caroline said, "just like your dad taught you." "Our dad," Liam corrected, grinning at Victor. Victor looked at his family, his wife, his son, his daughter, and felt complete in a way he'd never imagined possible. The scars of his past would always be there. The mistakes couldn't be unmade. But they'd built something real out of the ashes, something worth protecting. And if anyone ever threatened his family again, they'd learn that while Victor Moretti had left his criminal empire behind, he hadn't forgotten how to fight for what mattered. He'd just learned to fight smarter, cleaner, with the law on his side and love in his heart. That, he thought as he took his daughter in his arms, was the real victory. Not the empire he'd built, not the fear he'd commanded, but this perfect, messy, beautiful family that had saved him from himself. This was everything.